All right, real quick guys, I'm gonna give you the TLDR. If you don't wanna watch this whole video, here's 10 seconds. Robinhood, it's an investing app. They launched a 3% checking account, a 3% savings account. If you want to be on the wait list, link is in the description below. It comes out in January. Now let's get into the video. How can a checking account afford to pay you 3%? That's what we're gonna be talking about today. How are you guys doing? My name is Crider, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're talking about is the Robinhood checking account and the Robinhood savings account and how those are actually paying you 3% interest on your money in a bank account. Okay, so without further ado, what are we going to be talking about today? So the main topics I'm going to be hitting on in this video, and then I'll leave timestamps to all those in the description below as well, so you can skip around to the ones that actually matter to you and that you actually care about. So first of all, we're going to talk about who Robinhood is and what they are all about, where they came from, what they're doing, how they're shaking up the space. Next, we're going to be talking about why 3%. So why did Robinhood decide on these accounts, on these checking and savings accounts, to pay you 3% interest? Next, how can they actually afford that 3% interest on these checking and savings accounts? Like, how does that work? Next, what does this mean for some of the big banks? So how is Robinhood shaking up the big banks? And then at the end, we're going to be talking about the basics of this account, breaking down sort of the nitty-gritty details and what is next for Robinhood, what I see as coming next in the area, and where I see Robinhood as going in the future. So without further ado, let's get into who is Robinhood and what are they doing. So Robinhood is a company that started in 2013 out of Silicon Valley. The co-CEOs are Baiju Bhatt and Vladimir Tenev. They started this company in 2013, and for the most part, so far what it's been is it has been an investing platform. Okay, it's sort of been a discount online brokerage on steroids. So when I say that, what I mean is you can buy and sell stocks, options, cryptos, all without paying any kind of commissions, no fees whatsoever. Okay, so it's a very, very beneficial platform, especially for younger people who don't have as much money to invest but do want to get started. Okay, so they're targeted at a younger demographic. Obviously, if they're offering cryptos, if they're offering no fee investing, that is who their target market is, and they've been a very, very good job at dominating that market and really, in my opinion, stealing a lot of market share from big banks, which I see them as continuing to do as time goes on. They are really the ones who are leading the pack here in the financial industry. I see Robinhood as being at the forefront. Okay, they have come out with all these innovative features like no fee trading, and now you can see at least a dozen companies and a dozen apps who have sort of followed suit and are now trying to mimic Robinhood and catch up with Robinhood. So everybody else is on the defense, but Robinhood is definitely the company that I see as being on the offense and on the cutting edge of all of this innovative new technology in the financial sector. The next thing is why 3%? Okay, so why did Robinhood decide to pay 3% interest on their new checking and savings accounts? Well, first of all, it's just an unfounded amount to be paid on a checking account, especially a checking account. Okay, so think about it. The number one checking account, at least that I'm aware of right now, is the Discover checking account that pays you 1% interest. Okay, that is 1%. This is 3%. Okay, so that's already a huge step up. Like, it's completely unfounded to have 3% on a checking account, okay? And on a savings account, the highest ones that I'm aware of right now are about a 2.6, maybe a 2.7. So this is still even above the highest checking account balance. And for some of those 2.6, 2.7, you need at least $10,000 in that account to even get that interest rate. Okay, so this is huge. Okay, Robinhood is really, really shaking things up here. And just to give you some context, the average savings account interest rate in the United States, it's at a 0.08. Okay, so Robinhood is paying, if you do the math, 37.5 times more. 37.5 times more. And if you compound that over time, that's astronomically so much more than a 0.08% interest rate. Okay, so that's some context, but why they actually picked this number is in a statement from one of the co-founders. They said that they based it on the 10-year treasury. Okay, if you're not familiar, 10-year treasury, it's just the interest rate on a 10-year treasury bond, which is a bond that the US federal government puts out. You can loan money to the government via a treasury bond, and the 10-year treasury right now is about a 2.9. So Robinhood saw that, and that's what they decided to base this 3% on, because the 10-year treasury is a pretty safe investment option. The US government probably isn't going to default on the money they are borrowing, so that's why they decided to base this 3% on the 10-year treasury. But they also said that if the 10-year treasury does move significantly, then they are not fixed on this 3% mark. Okay, so what that means is if the 10-year treasury drops significantly, say it drops down to 1.5%, this 3% is probably not going to stay there. Okay, this 3% is probably not going to stay there if that 10-year treasury drops significantly. The same goes for if it rises significantly. Okay, so if interest rates go up significantly, then Robinhood is probably going to maintain that and keep rising their interest rates as well to match the 10-year treasury. Okay, so that's where this 3% came from. But how can they actually afford to pay 3%? Okay, because obviously most savings accounts and most checking accounts are not paying 3%. So how can they afford to do this? Well, there's really two main methods that Robinhood is using in order to pay this interest rate. But first, we got to mention a couple things. First, a statement from one of the co-CEOs, Baiju Bhatt, who said, "We fully intend to make money off of these accounts. However, we don't need to be profitable on day one." Okay, so that's a statement that he made yesterday. So basically, they are willing to take either a small loss or maybe even a significant loss in order to shake up the market and innovate. And they know that over time, this is going to pay off not only in brand equity, but also financially. They are going to find ways to monetize this and really turn it into a good investment opportunity for the business itself. Additionally, you got to keep in mind that Robinhood has no branch locations. Okay, so they're not like a big bank. They're not like US Bank or Chase Bank, who has all these individual branch locations that cost a lot of money to run, to keep the lights on, for rent, to pay bankers. They don't have all these expenses. Okay, they're keeping it a very, very lean business model. They hire minimal staff. They don't have branch locations, and they don't spend very much on marketing. Okay, so they're not buying 30-second Super Bowl commercial spots. Okay, they're not spending money on huge high-ticket expenses. They're keeping their expenses very, very low in order to do things where they can really, really innovate, like with this 3% on a checking account. Okay, so how can they actually afford to be paying this 3% to you? Well, there's two main ways that they're using in order to generate revenue from these accounts. And again, these accounts aren't out yet, so this is what they're going to be doing when these accounts actually do launch. The first way they're going to be monetizing these is the same way that all banks monetize. Okay, so they take your money at a low interest rate, they lend it out at a high interest rate, and they profit the difference. Okay, so for example, if I go to the bank, if I go to US Bank with $100 in my pocket, I give the banker $100, I deposit it into my savings account. You know what they do? They go out and they lend probably about 90 of those dollars out immediately to somebody who, say, wants to buy the latest iPhone on their credit card. Okay, so 90 of my dollars just went to buy that person's iPhone, and now the bank is going to make, say, 20% interest on that loan that they just lent out for that credit card, and they're paying me probably less than 1% on that savings account. Okay, so that's how banks make their money. That's what Robinhood's going to apply in this scenario as well. Okay, so they are giving you 3%, and in their case, they're probably investing that money into assets, into things like stocks, into treasury bonds maybe, but into assets that will grow their money over time, so that in the end, they're profiting the difference between the 3% they pay you and whatever percentage they can get on your money. Okay, so that's the basic method that they're going to be using. Then they're also going to be monetizing these through interchange. And if you're not familiar with what interchange is, neither was I a couple months ago until I started learning more about credit cards and how they actually work. So interchange is essentially when you swipe your credit card at a store. Say you go to the Apple store and you swipe your credit card to buy the latest iPhone. Apple, the retailer, is going to pay a percentage of that transaction to whoever the person who issued that card is. So it could be MasterCard, could be Visa, could be Discover, could be American Express. Okay, so a small percentage of that transaction, the retailer is paying to the credit card company. Where Robinhood comes in and what interchange is essentially a smaller percentage of that fee that the manufacturer or that the retailer got charged is going to go to Robinhood, because Robinhood licensed this card from MasterCard. In this case, this is a MasterCard debit card. So they licensed this card from MasterCard, so they get a little kickback from MasterCard. MasterCard gets a little kickback from Apple, and that's how that works. And that's the second way they're going to be making money. That's called interchange. Now, what does this mean for big banks? Okay, so what does this new checking account, what does this new Robinhood savings account mean for big banks? Well, it means bad news. Okay, big banks are already not doing too hot. Okay, so if you've seen the stock prices of big banks throughout 2018, they've actually lost about 15% throughout the course of 2018. That's compared to the S&P 500, which lost about 1%. So big banks are really not doing too hot at the moment. Now, this by Robinhood is definitely not going to be helping their case at all. Okay, Robinhood is setting the bar very high for checking and savings accounts, especially for young people. Okay, so that's their main target. Okay, young people who want convenience, young people who don't want to have to think about working with a big bank and sitting on the phone on hold for an hour. Okay, that's where Robinhood's main target consumer is. And at this point, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for people to opt for a big bank checking account when they could opt for one from Robinhood and be making 3% on their money. So we're going to be talking about what I see as the future of Robinhood in a little bit, but for now, it doesn't look too great for big banks, at least in my opinion. Again, let me know in the comments below what you think about the future of big banks and what this is going to impact big banks, if it is at all. Let me know what you think. But now let's move on to actually the specs of the card. Okay, so what does this account entail? What does this Robinhood checking account actually entail? Well, first of all, like I said, is a MasterCard debit card that is launching next month in January of 2019. Okay, so it's a MasterCard debit card, pretty straightforward there. If you're in the United States, that's going to be accepted pretty much everywhere that accepts a card. Visa and MasterCard are really the two big ones, so you don't have to worry too much there. They're also, this is huge as well, they're partnered with Costco, Target, 7-Eleven, and Walgreens in order to give you a network of 75,000 ATMs that you can use with no fees, okay? So since they're not a big bank, they can't go out there and build their own and invest in their own ATMs. They build their own network. So what they're doing is they're leveraging the networks of all these retailers so that if you go to a Costco, a Target, a 7-Eleven, or a Walgreens, any of the ATMs in there you can use without paying any fee at all, okay? So this is huge, because normally if you get a debit card from an online company and there's no ATMs you can use, that's a huge disadvantage, okay? That's a huge advantage that big banks do have. I know personally I don't really use ATMs, but for people that do, that's a huge advantage of a big bank that a big bank has to offer. And especially since Robinhood has no branch locations, that'd be really tough if you needed to get cash because you really couldn't. But since they have this huge network of ATMs, that's going to be a really, really beneficial asset for a lot of people that are going to be using this card. Additionally, they already have about 200,000 people on the waiting list for this card that is going to launch next month, which is absurd. And again, there's a link down below in the description if you want to join that waiting list and choose what color you want, because they also have 4 different color options, which I kind of like. I'm really into colors, as you can tell. But the 4 options that they have are green, black, white, and the American flag. And by the time you're watching this, the green one might actually be out. That's the one I requested, but they only got about 3,000 of those left. And with probably about 10,000 people or so applying for this card every single day, definitely can't guarantee that'll still be up by the time this video does go up. Now, Robinhood is also revamping their app extremely with this new card, okay? Because right now, essentially what you can do on the app is you can invest in stocks, options, cryptocurrencies. That's it. You can open a brokerage account, you can put some money in there, and then you can invest that money as you wish. They're really expanding this app to be more of a mobile banking experience, obviously, since they're adding the checking account and the savings account, but they're also adding a lot of cool features as well, like the ability to pay bills, the ability to deposit checks, the ability to set up direct deposit. They're adding so much to this app that it's really going to be a huge, huge competitor for big banks. And again, I really see this as being a huge, huge step forward for the whole financial industry, because it's going to promote some tight competition between these guys, which is going to mean good stuff for us, probably bad stuff for them, but good stuff for the end consumer, in my opinion. And lastly, this account is actually going to be run through Sutton Bank. Since Robinhood is not a bank, they need to partner with a bank in order to make this card happen. So they're partnering with Sutton Bank in order to hold your money, essentially. Since Robinhood isn't a bank, they're not gonna be the ones to hold your money. They need to partner with a bank, which is going to be Sutton Bank for this card. And now let's talk about what I see as the future of Robinhood. Okay, what do I think Robinhood is going to do next? Well, there's 5 main things that I see as being very, very strong possibilities for Robinhood in the next 3 to 5 years. So let's break those down individually. The first one, and I think the most monumental of these, is developing some kind of Venmo-like service. Okay, so I'm talking about a peer-to-peer money transfer platform, okay? Because that's really the only thing, in my view, one of the last things that sets Robinhood apart from your big banks is having some kind of Venmo-like platform where people could send money to each other. Because once they incorporate that, there's not much that a big bank like US Bank or Chase Bank has that Robinhood does not have that a young consumer would require, okay? That's really what people do with their money. They get it, they put it into a bank account, they might invest it, or they might send it to other people, and they might spend it, okay? And if Robinhood can address all of these things with a Venmo-like platform, I think that'd be huge. So they might develop their own in-house, but I think they would probably opt for buying one instead, since there are a lot of money transfer platforms out there already, or they might just incorporate one of the existing ones into their platform. And again, I think that would be one of the biggest, most pivotal things that Robinhood could do at this point, and would really, really shake things up a lot in the industry. The next thing I think is a very logical transition for Robinhood, and maybe their next step would be to develop some kind of robo-advising platform, because at this point in time, you really do have to select your own investments, and you have to pick out your individual stocks, ETFs, options, cryptos, and there's not really a platform for people who don't want to do that, okay? Because there's other apps like M1 Finance that allows you to sort of use some expert recommendations and not have to think as much about your investments. And for younger people especially, a lot of us don't want to have to think about what we're investing in. They don't want to have to go out there and do all the research. They would rather just have it all put together for them and packaged up real nice. And I think that's a very logical next step for Robinhood to develop some kind of feature with like recommended portfolios or something like that, where they can allow people who don't want to think about it as much to still be investing and not be intimidated by all the options that they have available to them through the Robinhood platform. Tying into that, I also see them going into the sort of conscious investing or giving back space. And by that, I sort of mean like the Tom's Shoes model, where you buy a pair of shoes, they give a pair of shoes, something like that, where they're giving some kind of percentage of their income, of their profits, to some kind of charitable organization or to a good cause. I think that would be very, very smart for them as far as a PR move goes, because again, young people into that whole giving back thing. So I think that would be a very good PR move for them as well, and also a good chance to help out some kind of cause. Next, I think a very logical transition for them would be branching out into a credit card. Since they have the debit card, they already have the partnership with MasterCard going on. I think it'd be a very logical next step for them to go into some kind of rewards credit card, maybe one that gave you rewards that could be deposited as money into your brokerage account as well, just to keep things in the Robinhood system. And lastly, I think this would be really, really big as well. So if you guys aren't familiar with Barclaycard, it's a credit card company that actually just developed a grab and go system. So sort of like these Amazon stores that you see popping up in New York, San Francisco. This concept is basically you get all your groceries or whatever you're buying at this store, you scan them with your phone, and then you just walk out, okay? You don't have to interact with any cash register, you don't have to stand in line, and you can just grab your stuff and go. So I think if they're able to incorporate that, again, young people, convenience, if you can incorporate that, do everything from your phone, I think that would just be huge for Robinhood, and it would really give people a reason to use this debit card. Because right now, a lot of young people would rather use a credit card, get some reward points. But if you could use that card and just like not have to stand in line and just like go, I would definitely do that, because I value my time, and I would much rather do that than stand in a long line when that is not something that I have to do. So those are the 5 big things that I see coming for Robinhood in the future. Again, just to recap, some kind of Venmo-like platform, a robo-advisor, some kind of conscious investing or giving back thing, a credit card, and then a grab and go system. Those are the big things that I see as coming in the near future for Robinhood. Let me know what you guys think about this video, about what's coming next for Robinhood, and what you think about this saving and checking account as well. I think it's gonna be huge. I'm already on the list. I'm definitely gonna use it as soon as I'm approved for it. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are down below. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video, if you wanna see more videos like this in the future. And if you guys don't know, my name is Crider, and I have a podcast called Young Smart Money. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, all those good places. So the link will be in the description below. Definitely give that a listen as well. That's all I got, guys. Have a wonderful day.